I'm talking today very much about kindness and gratitude and the side effects of those, but actually, you know, we tend to think of side effects as something that's an unwanted thing, but actually, as I'm hoping to show us, the side effects of kindness and gratitude are actually things that can benefit us greatly. So moving on to our very first slide, we are going straight into a little overview of what I'll include today, and I'm hoping to introduce you all, for those that haven't heard it, to the word kindfulness, which is a real word, I'm assured, and the essence of this is, if you live from your heart, it's good for your heart. And that comes from David Hamilton, who is really internationally renowned for his work on kindfulness, gratitude, and I you know, have pulled really deeply from his previous research and books, and I'm will be directing you to his website as well. I don't know him personally, he's just somebody that really inspires me with regards to kindfulness. So yeah, we're going to be looking at kindfulness and the vagal tone, being kind, and the hormone oxytocin, why being kind is good for your mental and physical health, and how practicing and actively adopting these practices can be incorporated into your everyday life. Some useful and hopefully easy to integrate strategies there. So first of all, then, what am I talking about when I'm talking about kindfulness? Well, many of us have probably heard the term mindfulness, very much the practice of focusing on what is happening in the moment and bringing our attention to it. Kindfulness is simply the practice of focusing on kindness. I will, as I say, later go into a lot more about what that actual kindfulness practice could look like. But we do now know that a kindful practice supports an increase in empathy, compassion, and happiness. And the more we practice kindfulness, the easier it becomes for us to start to notice and extract moments of joy from our lives, from the backdrop of everything that's happening, which can often be really difficult for us to pick out those joyous moments. So kindfulness can really help. So how mindfulness and kindfulness actually impact on our brain. So just a quick reminder with regards to mindfulness. Mindfulness and the practicing of mindfulness-based activities works out, as it were, areas of the brain associated with our executive functioning. And these tend to be things with regards to like self-control, such as concentration, working memory, planning, reasoning. So kindfulness has also been found to exercise specific regions of the brain that are associated with our empathy, compassion, and happiness. And whether we're exercising our muscles or our brain, what we do know is that exercise has a dose effect. And this means the more we do it, and the more we exercise that target area, the more powerful it becomes, and the functions we use it for become easier. So this makes sense then, that if we're doing our mindfulness practice on a regular basis, our ability to concentrate and reason becomes easier because that area is well exercised. And the same with this kindfulness exercising. So, you know, these are things that we're able to do. I'm thinking about a physical exercise metaphor. You know, if we're lifting weights, we're developing that arm muscle. If we're practicing kindfulness, we're developing that part of the brain that will enable empathy and compassion more easily. So there's quite a lot to get through, and I am mindful that I'm racing through some stuff, but as always, people can get in touch with me as necessary afterwards for lots of references or more opportunities to ask questions. So I wanted to move on to the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is one of I think it's the longest nerve in the body, and studies show that loving kindness meditation, which I will be demonstrating a bit later on, this practice actually increases our vagal tone. And the vagal tone is the health and the fitness of this vagus nerve. And this is a major component, this nerve, of our parasympathetic nervous system. So that rest digest system, the system that's opposite to fight and flight. So hopefully it's beginning to make sense that if we have a good worked out vagus muscle, it's toned, it has vagal tone, vagal nerve, sorry, then the higher the tone, generally the greater dominance of that system over the other one. Okay, so the higher the vagal tone, the easier it is for us to access our rest and digest. And the science behind the reason that kindfulness practice impacts on the vagus nerve in this way is due to the role that scientists are finding that the vagus nerve plays in compassion. So those of us who perhaps have what we call a high resting vagal tone, so a well worked out vagus nerve that's well exercised, tend to be highly compassionate and show a tendency towards altruistic behaviour. However, it is a two-way street, because kindness and compassion themselves actually increase our vagal tone, and a high vagal tone begets compassion and kindness. So it's almost a symbiotic relationship. So if we work to develop our vagal tone, we're more compassionate. If we're more compassionate, the higher our vagal tone becomes, and we're on almost a loop there. So moving on. So not only is the vagus nerve really, really beneficial in allowing us to access and practice compassion and empathy, it also has a really crucial role in inflammation and the inflammation we might be experiencing in the body. So, for example, the vagus nerve sends signals to some genes that govern the inflammation in the body, which is generally considered an unhelpful thing, high inflammation. And this vagus nerve, almost like a dimmer switch, enables the body to turn down some of that inflammation. So again, this having a high vagal tone is associated with lower inflammation levels. And people who were on a study practicing this loving kindness meditation, which I will show you, has showed that they had a much lower inflammatory response to stress than non-practitioners. And this is presumably, although not substantiated, due to this increased vagal tone. So I hope we're beginning to get an idea that the vagus nerve, which is really crucial in our rest and digest calming state, is a nerve that really benefits from being of high tone. That in itself produces the ability to be more compassionate, which has various knock-on effects, including a reduction in inflammation. So there is a lot to take in, but there's nothing that I've put in that I didn't want us to get a chance to learn. So we're going to look at a bit more about how this starts to benefit us physically. So this vagus nerve, a meta-analysis, so a study of lots of other studies involving 1,822 cancer patients, found that those with a higher vagal tone had a better prognosis. Significantly, the study found that the survival time in patients with a higher vagal tone was actually statistically significantly longer than it was in patients with a low vagal tone. You know, and this is starting perhaps to help us understand just how important being able to have this higher vagal tone could be in terms of the inflammation system. And what the authors hypothesized was that this there is almost a protective role of the vagus nerve in cancer, and that this is likely to be as a result of this anti-inflammatory effect that has been noted. So, you know, it's the research in this area is actually relatively new, but it's yielding some really good results. So I'm sure we all want to know, well, this sounds incredible. How are we going to be increasing our vagal tone? So certainly, and it's hopefully all going to neatly tie together at the end, one of the ways we've already identified is by being compassionate and showing empathy. There are other methods, however, and these can include exercise. So again, another hypothesis is that having a high vagal tone is likely to result in better prognosis in cancer, because if we're exercising to achieve that, then we're also getting all of the benefits of an active and healthy lifestyle. In addition, there are a whole host of other things that we can do, again, that I've got lots of information on if people want it, to increase our vagal tone. Things like cold temperature exposure, things like cold showers and cold water swimming are wild swimming, very popular at the moment. Deep meditative breathing, so again, a lot of regular breath work practice. Singing, for those of us who enjoy singing, humming, gargling. So all of these can be things that can increase our vagal tone. So in short, kindfulness impacts the brain circuits, boosts empathy, compassion and joy, increases the vagal tone, counters stress, reduces inflammation, and can even play a protective role in cancer progression. Okay, so that's already quite a lot of optimism and excitement about this for me personally anyway. And kindness has a social aspect, so the things that we say or do, so you know how we are to others. However, the other aspect of kindness is how we choose to use our minds as well. So it's not just about the compassion we're showing others and the empathy we're showing others. There is also an element of what and who we choose to focus upon. And this certainly, you know, we'll hear people say your diet is just not what we eat. So what we surround ourselves with, the environments in which we immerse ourselves in, those the kinder they are, those feelings are more induced to go inwards and affect our mental and physical health. So if we are surrounded by kindness, then that's likely to be hugely beneficial. If we're surrounded by things that we find very difficult or hostile or toxic, conversely, those can be quite dangerous. So let's have a look at being kind versus being unkind. I mean, hopefully the majority of us probably 100%, are definitely in the Being Kind camp on the call. But it's always really, really useful for me to get some data out there to just show us when life is difficult, as unkind as we might want to be for whatever reason, actually, it's always the better thing to be kind. So comparison studies have looked at what we call soft attitudes and behaviours. And these soft attitudes and behaviours are things like empathy and kindness, compassion, gentleness, versus what are referred to as harder attitudes. And these are more associated with aggression and acting in a hostile manner. And what the comparison studies have found is that softer behaviours maintain a healthy heart, and harder attitudes are actually correlated with cardiovascular disease. So in one study, 150 couples were observed interacting, and their attitudes and behaviours were recorded. Those who were found to be quite hostile in their communication were found to have higher levels of coronary artery calcification. So that's the hardening of arteries. And those who were softer, who lived from the heart, so to speak, actually had healthier arteries, even when accounting for lifestyle factors. So why is this? What could be going on there? Well, some of the potential explanations for this kind of observation are assuming that because hostility and aggression tend to create stress, and we tend to think of stress causing negative effects on the body, the actual results can't be accounted for in this way, because although stress is a factor on their cardiovascular health, it is to a much lesser degree than one might suppose, and certainly in with regards to the data found in that study. Because stress itself doesn't actually damage the cardiovascular system as rapidly. So there must be something else going on. There must be a difference between general stress, such as financial concerns, work-related stress, and the stress that our body actually experiences as a result of us being hostile and aggressive. So further research has actually found that these kind of harder attitudes and behaviours reduce levels of what we call the love drug. So oxytocin, which is a kindness hormone, and from an evolutionary perspective, one of the oldest in our makeup, in our physical makeup, this is reduced by these behaviours. And research has shown that oxytocin is actually cardioprotective, that the production of oxytocin actually protects the cardiovascular system. So when we have higher levels of this, our hearts have increased protection from lifestyle stressors and general stress. And when these levels are suppressed, such as when we're exhibiting a lot of hostile and aggressive behaviour, our cardiovascular system is much more at the mercy of our stress and lifestyle. So actually, it's this reduction in oxytocin that's likely to be the key factor in that study. And when we look at it a little more in terms of what's going on, how is oxytocin actually achieving that cardio protection? It does so in two ways. It lowers blood pressure because it triggers the production of various chemicals, which allows our blood vessels to dilate. And this means that there is a lot less effort required by the heart to pump blood around the body. Oxytocin is also a powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. So, this counter acts the formation of free radicals, which are the things that tend to age and damage our cells. So it's not only protecting our heart, but it's also protecting our immune system as well, which is incredible, really, when we think about that. So this love drug, this oxytocin, over time can actually reduce the chances of the hardening of the arteries, of heart attack and stroke, that can be increased over time just by general life and our life circumstances and stressors. And while it would be wonderful to think that that means that kind people never develop any kind of vascular illness, obviously there is the caveat that a lot of different reasons exist that contribute to that, such as genetics, diet, lifestyle, environment. However, if you want to lower your chances with regards to those illnesses, then boosting our oxytocin is the good way to go. And so moving on to why it's so important then for us as carers in the roles that we're in, to have good vagal tone, high levels of oxytocin. Not only is it good for us, but kindness in caring. And this goes some way to explain why studies report that when doctors show empathy for their patients, patients recover faster and have better outcomes. So in one study, patients who visited their GP with cold symptoms were asked after the consultation to rate their doctor's empathy level. Those who rated their doctor as 10 out of 10 in empathy then went on to report that they had recovered faster, had lower cold severity, and a higher immune system count than those who gave the doctor a lower score, suggesting that simply the empathy displayed by their GP was the key factor that resulted in these better outcomes. So again, another study here of 175 prostate cancer patients, those treated with high empathy doctors had higher levels of natural killer cells in their blood, and these cells significantly increased over a 3-month period compared to those who were treated with, again, a perceived lower empathy doctor. And so, these kind of studies are shown time and time again that empathy in the patient-physician communication is of unquestionable importance. So we are, just by being kinder and more empathetic to those we encounter in our working roles, are likely to have significantly better clinical outcomes, which is priceless, really. And this shows as well that, this kindness is contagious. If how a GP empathizes with a patient increases their chances of recovering and faster, then it's no surprise really to acknowledge that love, empathy, compassion, kindness obviously nourish the needs of the emotional heart. And it has been found time and time again in various studies that when we give, receive, or even see somebody else being kind, our physical systems actually receive a boost. So when volunteers were asked to watch a video of Mother Teresa on a caring, kind mission for homeless people, an important immune system antibody in those individuals increased by around 50% as a result of watching a video of somebody else being kind. You know, so it makes much more physiological impact than we could ever imagine. And I want to throw in a few more wise words from David Hamilton. So in summary of a lot of the studies that I've reported here today, he notes that it reminds him of something that he once read, and that a doctor of 30 years practicing medicine once told a patient, the best medicine for what ails the human creature is love. What if it doesn't work? Asked the patient. Then double the dose, replied the doctor. You know, and if we have this at our foundation of how we go into each day, then, you know, hopefully we can ail a lot of what we all as humans experience. So I want to move on to the concluding part of the presentation, really, kindness and gratitude, and then how to do some of these actual practices. So really interesting study here. 71 female students asked to record how often they were kind. They weren't asked to change their behaviour at all. They were just asked, make a note every time you're kind this week. Do it at the start and do it at the end with this measure of how happy you're feeling, with a control group of 48 randomly selected participants. So after that week, 100% of those participants reported an increase in happiness, and 100% of those individuals were happier than the control group. Now, this wasn't a surprise, because lots of studies suggest that being kind makes us happier. And there are studies where people have been given large amounts of money, and one group has been told to go out and spend it on themselves, and another group to spend it on other people. And the group that spend it on other people actually report higher happiness. However, this study was a little different in that all this study asked these participants to do was act as you normally do, and then just notice it. And the data actually showed, when explored further, that 21, about a third of these participants, not only became happier, but became statistically significantly happier. So what the researchers found, that of those 21 individuals, they had done many more acts of kindness on average than the rest, suggesting a correlation between how kind you are and how happy you are. But they also noticed that they found that these women also felt more grateful about their experience of being kind, which suggests that this gratitude is really beneficial. So I'm just going to go through the top 10 of what practicing gratitude studies summarize. 1, it's good for your mental health. Lots of studies have shown that regular gratitude practice, such as keeping a gratitude journal, boosts happiness. Practicing gratitude helps counter stress, because when we're stressed, we focus on stressors. When we are looking for things that we are grateful for in our lives, this redirects our minds and it relieves the stress that stressors bring. It allows us to get much more skilled at switching our focus in the moment, so that we notice more readily the things that are good in our life. So going back to the start of the presentation, this kindness, this internal kindness, is where we choose to direct our attention. So practicing gratitude incredibly inspires us to exercise more. So studies have found that practicing gratitude leads to us increasing self-compassionate actions and this includes exercise. So if we're grateful for life, we tend to take care of ourselves more and prioritise actions that support our health and well-being. Practicing gratitude can help us achieve our goals. Over a measured 2-month period, research showed that people making gratitude lists were more likely to make progress towards their personal goals. And maybe, you know, not only do we feel more motivated, but we just feel more creative and more able to spot solutions because we're focused on the good as opposed to the barriers. Practicing gratitude makes us kinder. So one finding of gratitude research is that people keeping daily gratitude lists are more likely to help somebody in need when compared with people who are making lists of problems that need solving and difficulties. Practicing gratitude has been shown to decrease loneliness and increase our connection. And this is because it tends to improve the relationships and connections with others. So gratitude study participants report feeling more connected to people, and some even report feeling more connected and part of life as a whole. It actually increases that sense of belonging to the world. It can help us sleep better. Count your blessings and not sheep. Again, one of the hypotheses with regards to this is that it moves our mind away from stresses and towards good things, which helps us to calm, which helps us to sleep. It increases our sense of control because when we start observing the positive effects of gratitude, generally, we're likely then to have an increase in optimism, which enables us to feel more in control and able to turn our lives around or certainly move towards our goals. Unsurprisingly, people are likely to like you better if you practice gratitude. And this again, it's just makes perfect sense that if we practice gratitude and we are thinking of the people in our lives we are grateful for and why, we're likely to improve the quality of those relationships, and that's likely to make us warmer towards others. And people like people who are kind and warm. And then finally, just in terms of the research, you know, there could be more. Practicing gratitude is really, really good for our overall physical and mental health, but certainly in terms of our physical health, it increases our chances of exercise. It's cardioprotective and immunoprotective. So just a few slides now on how we can do this. So gratitude is a practice and it benefits from consistency. So keep a gratitude journal. This can be a notepad, it can be a scrap of paper, it can be a beautiful book with gratitude journal on it, whatever works for you. And note down things that occur daily that you're grateful for. These can just be 3 things, you know, they could be people in your life, things about yourself you're grateful for, your personality, your talents, the animals in your life, anything that reminds you that you are enough. In terms of kindfulness practices, this can be just setting aside a few minutes a day to focus on someone you know and reflect on some of the kind things they may have said or done, or focus on someone you know and think kindly of them. What admirable aspects of their personality do you like? Recall acts of kindness that you've experienced, witnessed, or that you've undertaken. And the more time, you know, these practices, while we're standing waiting for a kettle to boil, that think about the not last kind experience we had, just think of all of those benefits that we've identified that will be going on as a result of this kindfulness practice. And then just a quick guide on making oxytocin. So no external chemistry required here. Unfortunately, there is no magic kindness hormone pill. There is only one way to get this circulating around your bloodstream, and this is to create it internally. And the way to do this is to practice these softer behaviors. So your heart health advice is love and be loved, show empathy and compassion, exercise patience, listen to people when they need to talk, hug people. I know David Hamilton then puts for about the next 6 bullet points, hug some more people, hug people, because hugging or even self-hugging will release oxytocin. Tell your loved ones that you love them. Be kind, because practicing this regularly may result in the side effect of you experiencing cardioprotective and immunoprotective benefits. So I have included there the 5 side effects of kindness, which is Dr. David Hamilton's book, which the majority of this webinar has been presented on. That is also then a link to a YouTube page of him giving a really, really eloquent overview on the side effects of kindness. And there is so much research out there for you all to access. And in terms of the loving kindness meta meditation, I just want to finish with that just very briefly before our time to have some reflections and discussion. This is a meditation that very simply asks us to, ideally, if we can, put our hands over our heart. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free from harm and suffering. May you be safe. May you be well. May you be free from harm and suffering. May all be safe. May all be well. May all be free from harm and suffering. There are a lot of resources to access a whole host of loving kindness meditations that I can direct you to following the webinar. So I'd like to thank you for listening to me, and I'd like you to take a few moments to thank yourself for taking the time. Any questions?